think that it might be possible that the moment at which Conan slowly begins to solve the Riddle of Steel is after he lights Valeria's funeral pyre. He tears off the pendant that marked him as a slave of the Wheel of Pain, as well as a gladiator, and replaces it with a jewel that he gave to Valeria after the first theft, signifying that he refuses the teachings of the past to fully embrace her memory. I chose this moment because of another detail. When Conan is looking at the fire, a quick flash of light flies across the pendant. Could this reflection be Valeria's soul? After all, we can see the same flash of light on the jewel shortly before her death. Did her soul leave at that moment only to return later into the jewel to save Conan's life? I wouldn't consider this interpretation if the flashing of the jewel wasn't standing out so much and if the movie wasn't replete with many hidden details. However, the jewel flashes up at least 4 more times in the movie, and I could say that the first 3 times signify that the giant snake is about to die, and that by the 4th time Valeria's soul moves into the jewel, but I can't really prove this theory. If it is correct, then he may not know it yet, but Conan has been imbued with a seed of further growth. 2 last observations before we move on. Valeria's funeral pyre burns with great intensity, with what sometimes looks like little explosions, and it takes place during the night. This reminds me of the fires and darkness of the forge at the beginning of the movie. If this is true, then the fire becomes the bringer and final devourer of life. And last but not least, the skeleton soldiers in the shot make it look as if someone important like a king is being brought to their final rest. But their corpses also serve as a reminder that even the greatest cannot resist death. Before the Battle of the Mounds begins, take a look at this detail. Doom's men must divide their group to ride around the altar on which Valeria's corpse was burned. This is a repetition of the shot of when Doom's men were about to raid Conan's village. The division of their group is an imitation of Thulsa Doom's symbol, the 2-headed snake. The stones in those images take on the role of the black sun from which the 2 heads emerge, and the 2 heads are the 2 columns that they form. This metaphor for the 2 heads becomes even more obvious the second time around because each of the columns are respectively led by Rexor and Thorgrim. It is clear throughout the movie that they are the executioners of Thulsa Doom's will. They have virtually no identity and will of their own. They are his flesh, they are his 2 heads. One last speculative detail before we get to the solution of the Riddle of Steel. The movie contains many Viking references and Thorgrim might be one of them. Not only because part of his name and his warhammer are a reference to Thor, the god of thunder, but because in the myth, after killing Jormungandr, Thor is destined to die of its poison after taking 9 steps. In the movie, Thorgrim takes roughly 9 steps before he is killed by a trap. I say roughly because there is no telling if he makes 1 or 2 steps when he is turning around. If only he had studied his namesake more, he might have known that meddling with snakes would put a limit to his mileage.